Have you ever wondered what happens when two completely different worlds collide? This is the story of a man who had everything: power, fame, and influence, and another who had nothing but the clothes on his back and memories of a life once lived with dignity. What could possibly connect them? One cold winter morning, on the bustling streets of New York, Donald Trump, a man synonymous with wealth and success, comes face to face with a homeless veteran. The air was biting cold, and the veteran sat huddled in a corner, ignored by the busy passers-by. His eyes carried stories of sacrifice, loss, and resilience, but few cared to notice. What happens next will leave you speechless. A gesture so unexpected, so profound, that it sends ripples far beyond that street corner. This isn't just a tale of charity. It's about recognizing humanity in its rawest form. It's about a moment of vulnerability from one of the most powerful men in the world, and how that moment changed not just the life of the veteran, but also left an unforgettable mark on everyone who heard this story. Stay with us as we uncover the twists and emotions behind this encounter. This is more than just a story. It's a lesson about compassion, understanding, and the incredible power of a single act of kindness. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Mr. Zainorama Stories for more such inspiring and thought-provoking tales that remind us of the goodness in the world. Don't forget to hit the bell icon for updates. Donald Trump took a seat on the cold sidewalk next to James, surprising not just the veteran, but the passers-by who now slowed, sneaking glances at the unusual scene. Trump, known for his larger-than-life persona, now seemed unusually grounded, almost humble. "James," Trump began, breaking the silence, "I can't imagine what it must have been like for you out there. Iraq, losing your brothers, your leg. That's real sacrifice. That's real service. And yet here you are, forgotten by the very country you fought to protect." James exhaled sharply, the warmth of his breath visible in the icy air. "You get used to it. Out there on the battlefield, you fight for the guy next to you. You tell yourself it's worth it, that when you come home, people will understand. But the truth is they don't. They can't. And well, you start to feel like you don't belong anywhere." Trump's brow furrowed. "That's not right. A man who's given what you've given deserves better. Why hasn't anyone stepped in? The government, charities, hell, even the people walking by you every day?" James shrugged, pulling his thin coat tighter around his shoulders. "They've got their own lives to live. And me? I'm just invisible." Trump shook his head. "You're not invisible to me. You're a fighter, James. Someone who's seen the worst of humanity and kept going. That's strength." James tilted his head, studying the man next to him. "You know," he said slowly, "I didn't expect someone like you to stop and talk to someone like me." Trump smirked, a hint of his old bravado shining through. "Someone like me? What's that supposed to mean?" James chuckled, the sound dry but genuine. "Rich, powerful, busy, you've got the whole world in your hands. Why waste time on a guy like me?" Trump leaned back against the wall, his expression softening. "Because I've been lucky, James. Sure, I've worked hard, but I've also had opportunities most people never get. And what's the point of all this? Power, money, influence, if I can't use it to help someone who deserves it? You fought for this country. Now it's time someone fought for you." James fell silent, his eyes welling up despite himself. He quickly wiped them, embarrassed. "I don't know what to say," he muttered. "You don't have to say anything," Trump replied. "But here's what I want from you. Tomorrow, meet me here. We're going to find you a place to stay, get you back on your feet. But more than that, I want to hear more about your story. Because people need to know about men like you." James hesitated, the weight of his cynicism battling the flicker of hope Trump had ignited. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Trump said, standing and extending a hand. "Deal?" James looked up at the outstretched hand, a simple gesture that carried the weight of a promise. Slowly, he reached out, their hands meeting in a firm shake. For the first time in years, James felt seen, not as a homeless man, not as a veteran, but as a human being. Trump smiled. "Good, now let's get you something warm to eat." As they walked down the street together, James couldn't help but feel that Donald Trump and James, a conversation of struggles and hope. As the snow fell softly around them, the two men remained on the sidewalk, seemingly out of place against the backdrop of bustling New York City. Donald Trump glanced at James, the homeless veteran whose story had already begun to stir something deep within him. He adjusted his coat against the biting wind and spoke again. You know, James, your story, it's not just yours. It's a reflection of something much bigger. Look around, Trump gestured to the skyscrapers. Towering above them, this city is a symbol of power and wealth. But for every building that scrapes the sky, there are thousands of people like you, forgotten in its shadows. How did we get here? James sighed, rubbing his gloved hands together for warmth. It's not just me, Mr. Trump. The system, it's broken. People come back from war, ready to rebuild their lives, and find nothing waiting for them. No jobs, no support, no place to call home. They talk about patriotism, about honoring service. But when you're no longer in uniform, you're just another statistic. Trump's brow furrowed as he listened. You're right. We spend billions on wars, but what about when the soldiers come home? How is it that a man who risked everything for his country ends up here, on the streets, while others live in luxury without ever lifting a finger to help? James looked down at the photograph he always carried, his voice low and filled with pain. And it's not just the veterans. Look at the families struggling to put food on the table, kids who don't know when their next meal will come, and entire neighborhoods forgotten by the people in power. It's like the world keeps moving forward, but it's leaving the rest of us behind. Trump nodded, the weight of James's words sinking in. I've seen it, James. The factories shutting down, small businesses crushed by corporations, families who work 2 or 3 jobs just to survive. And while some of us are blessed with more than we need, too many are forced to live with nothing. It's unacceptable. James leaned back, his eyes scanning the city around them. You know what the worst part is? People like me, people who've hit rock bottom, we stop believing anything can change. The government? They're too busy arguing to care. The rich? They throw charity galas, but it's just for show. And the rest? They're just trying to get by, too scared to stick their necks out for someone else. Trump's gaze hardened, and his voice carried a determination James hadn't. As the conversation stretched into the cold afternoon, the bustling streets of New York seemed to fade away, leaving only two men from vastly different worlds, connected by a shared understanding of the struggles around them. Donald Trump finally broke the silence, his voice steady but charged with determination. James, you're right. The system is broken. And people like you, people who've given everything, shouldn't have to fight this hard to live with dignity. But I promise you, this moment isn't just going to end here. We're going to make something happen. James looked up, his eyes narrowing, with cautious hope. And how exactly are you going to do that? A few bucks and a warm meal might get me through the day, but what about tomorrow? Or the next day? There's 1,000 more like me out here. Trump nodded, his expression resolute. It's not just about handing out money, James. It's about fixing the system. About making sure no one who's sacrificed for this country ends up in your shoes. I can't change the world overnight, but I can start somewhere. And I want to start with you. James tilted his head, skepticism lingering. Start with me? What does that even mean? Trump leaned closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. It means I want to help you rebuild your life. Not just for you, but to show others that it's possible. Tomorrow, my team will meet you here. We'll find you housing, connect you with job opportunities, and get you access to the resources you've been denied. And I want you to share your story, not just with me, but with the world. James blinked, stunned. You really think anyone wants to hear my story? I'm just another vet nobody cares about. Trump shook his head firmly. You're not just another vet. You're proof that even when life knocks you down, you can keep standing. People need to see that. They need to hear the truth about what's happening to people like you. Together we can shine a light on these issues and maybe, just maybe, wake people up. James sat in silence, the weight of Trump's words pressing against years of bitterness and despair. For the first time in a long time, he felt something stir within him, a flicker of hope. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "All right, I'll meet you here tomorrow. But not because I believe in miracles. Because for once someone's actually listening.